Hey, I'm Tim Baldermann. I want to welcome you to this edition of Too Honest for Social Media, where we talk about issues that affect us all here at the local, the county, the state, and the federal level. We are really fortunate today to have with us Will County State's Attorney Jim Glasgow. Correct? All
yes,
right.
Mayor.
Appreciate it, Jim. Thank you for being here. Jim, you are the longest serving full-time state's attorney in Illinois history, being in your 8th term. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's outstanding. So tell us a little bit about your life, about your career, and how you got to this position.
Well, when you throw in life, I was born at St. Vincent's Orphanage in Chicago at 721 North LaSalle. And my mother decided to not tell the truth about how tall my dad was, because they would ask at Catholic Charities, they wanted to make sure that the child fit in with the family, so they tried to match, ethnicity and height and weight and that kind of thing. So my birth dad was 6'2". She told them it was 5'6". Okay, and the crazy thing on that 5'6" was Joseph Francis Montague. And he, ironically, is the great uncle of Nicholas Sparks, the author.
Okay.
And my birth mother married him 3 years later.
Really?
So Nicholas Sparks is like my second cousin twice removed.
All right. We'll have to see the family tree to keep a track of that.
Yeah, it's just one of the many crazy things. But so because she said 5'6", James Glasgow from Joliet was 5'6".
Okay.
And his wife was Julia Murphy, 5'2". My mother was Bridget Agnes Dolan, 5'2". So they had a perfect match on the mom, and now they got a 5'6" dad. Bingo.
Yep.
So I go to Joliet, and I couldn't have gotten two better parents. I mean, it's the first divine intervention in my life, which I've had so many. I've lost count. But
by 4th grade, you were the tallest one in the family, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah. It's, but my dad did 4 years in World War II in Italy and France. And, so he had a character that is in short supply today. He always did the right thing, and he didn't care what the repercussions were. And so how do you get a better role model than that?
Can't ask for a better way to be raised. Yeah.
No. So, I'm a shy introvert by nature. But, he taught me if somebody's poking you in the chest, you have to deal with that.
That's right.
And so if you see unfairness, you got to deal with it. You got to speak up. And that's the one thing I enjoy the most, is being the only one in the room saying, hey, stop that, or hey, you can't do that, which fits perfectly with my job.
Right.
But at the same time, I also have a fierce belief in fairness. And I've had the honor of dismissing 2 murder cases in my career. One was the murder of Juliet Chin in Frankfurt. And while we were preparing the case, we realized that the blood spatter evidence that we had was faulty, and I couldn't prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. So the defendant, Barry McCarthy, I dismissed the case. And his defense attorney had not even provided me with that information. We generated that internally because we started to doubt our case. 6 years later, we caught the real killer.
Wow.
Now, if that's the only thing ever happened, that's just an amazing thing. So then the next one was Kevin Fox, the world famous Kevin Fox that Tom Zek charged in a hurry before the election. Okay. And so working with the defense attorney on that, the YSTR test came out for DNA, and it was brand new. So after Kevin Fox's sample went through that, he was excluded with 7 loci. If one loci doesn't match, you're out. He had 7 that didn't match. So absolutely, he wasn't the person who sexually assaulted his daughter. So I dismissed that case. You talk about an uproar.
Of course.
Okay. But I'd do it 1,000 times. And that's the one thing my dad and my mom gave me, is just don't worry about the consequences. You got to do the right thing, especially at this level. And guess what? We caught this real killer with the help of the FBI 6 years later.
Absolutely. And you're right, because what you're doing, you talk about doing the right thing, it could be life or death for somebody.
Yes.
And there's no question that you have to do it. It's a difficult thing. You're going to take some heat for it.
Yes.
But it is the right way. And it, like I said, it all comes back to your upbringing and the way you were raised. So that's outstanding that you had people that were willing to take you into their family and raise you in that way. Let's talk a little bit about your career. You have accomplished an awful lot. as our state's attorney here in Will County. We are certainly going to get into the Safety Act. So anyone that's watching or listening, stick around because that's going to be a great conversation. And you had a lot to do with changing the Safety Act from its first iteration and now prosecuting effectively, still with the constraints of the Safety Act, which are not good. But it's more than that. You did get a lot of national fame for what you were doing with that Safety Act, but you've done so much more that I think people need to know about. You started the Will County State's Attorney's High Technology Crime Unit that identifies predators who use the internet to produce, transmit, and download child pornography. Since 2012, over 150 individuals prosecuted under that, arrested and prosecuted. You've got the Will County Children's Advocacy Center. In 1995, you started that to stop child sexual predators in their tracks and provide victims with hope, healing, and justice. We have Paws for Kids. This is a community where everybody has one dog, if not two, and they're not supposed to have three, but a lot of them have three. You know, we kind of look the other way. Pet therapy program to comfort sexually abused children who have visited the Children's Advocacy Center. You have been really tough on domestic violence, and as a police officer, that was the thing that I never gave a pass on, was domestic violence. But you've helped create laws, Rebecca's Law, which raises penalties for abusers who torture their victims, in a new law that increases prison time for repeat offenders. You formed Financial Crimes Unit, Prosecution Unit. So many of us now, especially with the internet, have fallen victim and prey to financial crimes. The Will County Drug Court, which has helped hundreds of nonviolent offenders kick their addiction and return to society as productive members. And a League of Extraordinary Canines and Friends, a countywide initiative to combat animal cruelty and abuse through advocacy. Plus, you have sponsored, including here in New Lenox, so many police canine units when there was an absence of such, really gone away. So there's a lot that we're going to talk about, but these are some of the things, Jim, in your years, in your 8 terms as state's attorney, that I don't think people realize. They take for granted because they've been around for a long time now, but you really initiated these programs. Tell us what drove you to do more than just prosecute, to make sure that people are being prosecuted for crimes.
Well, I went to Catholic schools throughout my education. Then I went to the University of Illinois, but I stayed at Newman Hall, which was the dormitory attached to the Catholic Church down there. And so the basic moral principles that you learn, whatever your religion might be, are critical in guiding you. And, I just always had a sense of fairness that, I'm not the smartest guy and I'm not the most creative guy, but if I've got something that I'm passionate about, that's when whatever talents I have come to the fore. And so when I first got elected, I could see in Joliet that there was a real lack of, again, going back to my adoption, there but for the grace of God go I. I guess that's what I needed to say. Sure. Because I passionately felt that I got the biggest break in the world, and these kids in Joliet were getting nothing in a lot of areas. And their educations are substandard. So I created this group called Ceasefire. And it's an acronym for Character Education, Activates Self-Esteem, Fostering Individuals, Respecting Each Other. I did that in my first year in office. We raised $100,000, and we put character education in District 86, which was huge. And now they're doing it themselves. But it was a great impetus to get that started. We're young kids that are coming from really tough neighborhoods. Like you're studying history, and Ulysses S. Grant makes a decision to charge into battle. You talk about courage. What is it? What is courage? Because you memorize it, but you don't talk about what the character trait is. But that's what you do in character education. Honesty, compassion, empathy. What you hear compassion and empathy, what does that mean? Give examples. Talk to each other about it. Now, we still don't do enough of that. Right. And, you mentioned the League of Extraordinary Canines. I have a dream about, St. Francis of Assisi said that anyone who would deny the shelter of pity and compassion to any of God's creatures would do likewise to his fellow man. Well, that's the roadmap. If you get children to be compassionate and empathetic towards animals, it'll start to carry over into everything that they do, including human beings, obviously. But if we could get into the schools with that kind of a curriculum at the, say first grade through fourth, where they don't just play with the animals, they learn about how you have to care for them and how important that is, and the good feeling you get when you do something unselfish and compassionate for another person or an animal. And again, I shouldn't maybe go here, but I don't hunt. And so I don't condemn hunters, but I just can't bring myself to shoot a living thing.
Sure.
And I know somebody would say you're a hypocrite because you eat meat or whatever, but that's like a step removed.
Right.
And
it's
so
what you're comfortable with.
Yeah. So, but but again, that empathy and compassion still applies 100% to humans, because we've really gone off the track in our country today on the violence that comes to bear over political beliefs.
Well, I mean, and that in itself is a whole nother podcast. I will let you know that you are a product of your upbringing, as am I, and of our belief systems.
Yes.
Just so you know, at my little school that I run over in Joliet, we're not even allowed to kill bugs. The kids scoop them up and take them outside from a very early age. Yeah. It's ironic. The 8th graders don't want to touch them, so the 4th graders come down and scoop them up and take them out. But I absolutely believe in treating all life that way, regardless of whether it's human, insect, animal, doesn't matter.
Right.
So, no, I love that, and I think it's important that we teach that to our kids. But I think the point that I was trying to make is you have such a big job. Unfortunately, even though they are great communities in Will County, by the virtue of its size, there's a lot of crime.
Yeah.
So your hands are full as the lead prosecutor in this county, just in making sure that we have effective prosecutions, which you have done, but to take on all of these other, to have compassion for people who are addicted. Not everyone that does drugs is a criminal. Some people are sick. They have addiction. They need support. And as the state's attorney, you have really shown that we have to know the difference between those that need help and those that are out there feeding on others. And so you've done a great job with that.
Well, a good contrast, I guess, for my first year in office is I did the ceasefire effort, but at the same time, we did a gang initiative. I worked with Joliet PD, County, and a few other departments. My predecessor didn't have a gang unit. And every year, the shootings were going up 50 a year. In fact, at the end of my first year, they had 297. But on December 7th, we did a sweep. For months, we worked on figuring out who the shooters were, and we brought cases before the grand jury and got them indicted with suppressed indictments. And on December 7th, we arrested 47 targeted gang members. For the next 3 months, we had 0 shootings. And for the next year, we went from 297 to 182. The next year, 126, and it continued to go down with the aggressive work of my gang unit. But the neat thing was, it was my first year in office, and Peter Jennings' News Tonight featured that sweep on a national broadcast and said it was innovative and creative. And I'm like, well, I just got here. Thank you, But it was something that I campaigned on also. And we've kept that up. When the gang members were coming into the courthouse and throwing gang signs and wearing gang hats and all that stuff, I went to the chief judge and I said, I'm going to bring a petition to you to ban that stuff in the courthouse.
Yeah.
And Judge Masters signed that. As soon as he signed that, it stopped. The bangers knew they couldn't come. If they came in with their hat, they were going to get arrested.
Right.
It literally stopped.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things. There was another thing. That one was the most direct result I've ever gotten. But I worked with Tom Cross on another bill when that synthetic marijuana was out. Okay, and Tom helped me tremendously in the legislature, and we got it done. And then 3 months before it went into effect, Tom and I co-signed a letter to like 600 tobacco stores in Will County that were selling that stuff, and we told them, you're going to be just fine as long as you take this stuff off your shelves. And I couldn't believe it, because on January 1st, we went around and sampled. It was all gone. And I looked at Tom and I said, this is too bad all legislation doesn't work this well.
Well, let's speak about legislation. And before we do get into the Safety Act, I do want to tell you, you and I talked a little bit about this. In my 22 years in law enforcement in Cook County, exclusively in Cook County, and I'm happy to see a new state's attorney there now.
Yes.
But it was just horrific, the revolving door. I would arrest somebody that would have their 50th arrest. And I'd call felony review to get felony approval. I can't because they don't have any convictions. I said, they don't have any convictions because you keep giving them probation or supervision. I said, it's horrible. So I had one big case where someone had brought up several hundred pounds from Texas. And we stopped them, and we had to stop in Cook County, and we had the search warrant in Will County. Okay. So I had the choice to go to either prosecution, and it was a no-brainer. After my many years in Cook County, I came to your office. Timothy Spence was the case, but your team did a great job with that. The reputation was well known of what you were doing out here already, and it really was we were very envious of the Will County officers and detectives that they got to work with your department as opposed to what we were working with. And we had some great state's attorneys, assistant state's attorneys in Cook County. Some of them are really good friends of mine. They trade hard, but jails were overcrowded and it just wasn't going to happen. Right. So kudos to you on that. Let's talk about the Safety Act. There is some misconceptions about what's happened. When the law first came out, when the bill first came out, there were several components to it that, for example, someone couldn't be held unless they were a threat to a direct individual. There still are a lot, but there were a lot of problems with that. But let's talk about that. Go ahead.
Let me just speak to that one point.
Yes.
Think of the lunacy of this.
Yes.
A man kills his wife.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we bring him in, and we're having the hearing to detain. The only person we know that he's a danger to, he's murdered.
That's right.
So he gets out.
Yeah.
That's what the law said.
Right.
So I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to be sorry because I gave that example all the time about how ludicrous that is. It's still a crazy, crazy piece of legislation. But if you can talk a little bit about some of those issues, what you did, because you were on the forefront. And again, there's plenty of blame to go around on political parties. So you can't just harp on one party because no matter what level you're at, there's always some goof out there that's doing something. But here, the Democratic Party controls Illinois in this legislation, and you've been a member of that party, but you didn't care about the politics. You cared about the people. So talk a little bit about what the challenges were in your fight on this piece of legislation.
Well, just on the Democrat thing, I'm a 1992 Democrat.
Well,
okay?
Yeah, I know what that means.
And if you watch Bill Clinton talk in 1992, that's good for me now. But he doesn't talk that way anymore.
Understood.
And Bill Maher, who was one of the most liberal comedians, is just chastising certain people on these crazy things. So whatever. It's just I don't play politics in my office. That's right. It doesn't matter whether the person's a Democrat or a Republican. When I brought the lawsuit, there was 4 Republicans that I had to sue. I currently have a couple cases involving Democrats. It doesn't matter. It's what does the law say and what's fair and equitable. And it's.
What were some of the problems that you saw that you needed to address?
The thing that was driving me crazy is I kept telling everybody, and this happens in my office sometimes because I'm very emotional, okay? Yes. And I sometimes yell. But as I tell people, the more emotional I get and the more I yell, the more brilliant I become. I mean, seriously. I'm
going to have to use that, although I'm always calm, aren't I, Don and Beth? Right?
Because I'm not brilliant naturally, but there's something about the endorphins or the whatever.
So you don't turn green when you get angry; you just get smarter.
Close.
Yeah. Okay.
But and everybody knows I'm not malicious. I'm angry about the situation.
You're passionate.
Yeah. So I got invited to give a speech at the park in Naperville on July 4th, 2022. And nobody was saying anything about this Safety Act. Everybody was saying, well, that's bad, but what are you going to do about it? So I get up there and I start talking, and I just let loose. And, I said, look, this new law says that no matter what you've done, you can kill 50 people. And if you kill 50 people, the prosecutor cannot get you to trial in 90 days. But after 90 days, you are to be released. You don't even have to demand it. you're going to be released. And then if you don't come back to court, they took away the judge's authority to issue a warrant. And I said, that's Armageddon.
Right.
And I said, the jails will empty and no one will come to court and we won't be able to arrest them. Now, they threw in this lame-ass line that we could serve a rule to show cause on them. But who's to serve that? That's not the job of a municipal officer. No. It would all fall on the sheriff.
Right.
They don't have the manpower to do that. And are you going to send a sheriff with a rule to show cause to somebody that's killed 10 people?
Right.
You might as well shoot the officer before he goes. That's crazy. You can't do that. And then you can't bring the SWAT team because you don't have a warrant. You don't have probable cause to. You don't have the constitutional protections you would have with a warrant. And as we know with ICE, right?
As we see that right now, yes.
Yeah. So it was absolute insanity, and nobody would listen, even within my own organization, the States Attorneys Association. The president was absolutely against bringing a lawsuit. So we got screaming matches every time we got on the, what do you call it? The YouTube, or what do you call it?
The Zoom at the time?
The
yeah,
Zoom.
That's right. The COVID Zoom, yes.
Yeah. So it was silly. And, but gradually, Jim Rowe from Kankakee came on board. And we're both Democrats, right? Mm-hmm. So, and he was a huge help in getting some of the other state's attorneys. We eventually got 64 to sign on. And the ones that didn't, a lot of them are one-man offices and didn't have the wherewithal to actually do it.
Sure.
Okay? So, but we had the support of 100 out of 102 state's attorneys. Kim Fox and the Lake County State's Attorney were together against us. And in
Kim
support.
Fox, who for my money goes down
Yes.
as one of the worst state's attorneys I've ever seen in my life, and I worked in Cook County, like I said, for 22 years. What a disgrace to the office! But
it's really horrible
Yeah.
because right now Eileen O'Neill Burke has inherited
Yes.
that office, and I've talked to her, and she's spot on. She
Yeah.
knows what she's doing, and
does.
she's going to do the right things for the right reasons. But she's down about 400 attorneys. They used to have around 900 assistant state's attorneys. They've got like 540
they
now.
fled during the Fox
Yes.
term. They didn't want anything to do with her.
And then to make it worse, a lot of the 540 were hired by Fox, which, the criteria then were entirely different. So the sad thing is she did her 8 years of damage and disappears.
Right.
But I only talked to her one time on the phone, and she lied to me. I asked her to if we could get some of my top prosecutors and some of hers, sit down in a room and try to sort out some of these problems with the Safety Act. And she agreed on the phone. But then when we finally got the phone call, she's not there. None of her prosecutors are there, just her PIO. Mm-hmm. So, she sandbagged me.
Sure.
And, those two provisions that we just talked about, and plus the one that you talked about was also there. So if you were going to move forward to detain somebody, you had to show a specific person that they were a threat to, not the community as a whole.
That's right.
But a specific person, which we weren't going to be able to do.
Right. So you didn't have enough time to present the evidence you had to present. You couldn't show a specific person. So you got a lot of that through this lawsuit. You were able to get a lot of that changed. What are some of the challenges that still face you with the Safety Act today?
Well, let me just, we before the law went into effect, they sat down at the table with us. We had a 300-page amendment. And that's why we're functioning the way we are now. There's still anomalies in the law, but the ones about the bad guys getting out before trial, those have been handled. And but there's a whole litany. I've got a list right here.
Sure.
Of some of the lunatic charges that
still exist today that are problems.
These are on the books.
So let's talk about this.
And the one that's the most dramatic to me is possession of fentanyl under 5 grams is absolutely not detainable. Okay, and when I say not detainable, you could be a convicted murderer with an armed robbery conviction and crimes every day that you were on the planet. That doesn't matter. And I talk to the judges all the time, and I say, "This is really, you guys need to lobby with us because you have no discretion."
How much damage can under 5 grams of fentanyl do?
4.99 grams will kill 2,500 people.
And you cannot
And that's
detain.
not a danger to the public?
And you cannot detain. For
Cannot
under 5.
detain.
And judge has no say.
No. And I'll tell you a funny story. Pat Cardwell, who drove me here today, he's one of my investigators.
Yeah.
He looks out his kitchen window, and there's a guy in his car. in his garage.
Yeah.
So he goes out there, pulls out his gun, makes the arrest for burglary, and the guy was released immediately because burglary is not detainable. And then we look at his rap sheet, and he was arrested 35 times and been to prison 5 times, and he was absolutely, unequivocally not detainable. In fact, Pat was driving down the alley from our office, and the guy was sitting behind the liquor store drinking and waved to him.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they know.
Yeah, that's the ultimate irony.
Well, as you know, and we've had these conversations over the years, here in New Lenox and in this Lincoln Way area, we're pretty fortunate. We don't have a ton of serious crime.
Yeah.
But without exception, when we have these we had a couple of carjackings where two mothers with young kids in their cars had guns put on them.
Yes.
These are career criminals out of Cook County who don't do jail time. I mean, we're talking about some people that are 28, 30 years old, 32 years old that have got 15 arrests, 20 arrests, felony arrests,
right.
Armed violence arrests, and they're still roaming the streets. The only thing that, and people say this because our police department, I mean, there's a lot of great police departments. Ours is second to none. They catch everybody. They do a great job, and they appreciate the relationship they have with your office. But without question, anytime we post these things, people say, thank God it happened in Will County because now we have a chance of something going on.
Well, I appreciate that. And, again, like I said, we have a record of fairness. I would challenge you to find another state's attorney to let 2 murder persons charged with murder go. Politically, that's very dangerous, but politics can't play a role.
Yeah, in a moment, it's tough. But,
can't play a role in any decision that I make, ever.
So what do we do though, Jim? So you have this good relationship with the new state's attorney from Cook County, but her hands are tied in many ways as well, as far as the jail system goes, as far as the law still goes here. What can you say to the people of Will County when these career scumbags from Cook County come out here and commit these crimes? What do we say to these people when they have these long rap sheets from Cook County and nothing's ever happened to them? Is there hope when they get caught here?
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you the perfect example.
Yeah.
Jordan Henry.
Okay.
He does an attempt carjacking on a Will County resident, ironically, up in Chicago. And then he does a full-blown carjacking on an elderly man and then takes off. Well, the state police picked him up on flock camera and started chasing him. Well, they chased him for quite a while, but the foolish man headed to Will County. And they put the tack strips out in Shorewood, and we got him. And as they pulled him out of the swamp after he ran away, he says, "I'll be out by Sunday." Well, he never got out, and he got 26 years.
Outstanding, because of what happened here.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, there's you know about venue.
Yeah, I do.
Well, the appellate court overturned part of the conviction based on venue because I was very aggressive, and I argued that his crime wasn't complete until he got to Will County, so that it's a continuing criminal enterprise.
Sure.
So we convicted him on the attempt carjacking, and say they vacated that conviction. But 17 years of his sentence is still in play. And we sent him back to Cook County to be retried on that attempt carjacking. And I know that Eileen O'Neill Burke will do that. He also had a pending rape case, which I don't know what the status of that is, but we sent him back for trial on that also. But we just laughed at, he thought, okay, everybody in Cook County, you get arrested, you're out in 2 days. And it never happened. He never got out.
So and again, I worked there for a long time. I saw how it was, but jails are not as crowded as they used to be. There's certainly room, even in Cook County. Why can't this be done in Cook County? I know the numbers are large, but why can't it be done in Cook County and it's being done here?
Well, God bless Eileen O'Neill Burke, because she knew, she's lived in Cook County probably most of her professional career. She was a prosecutor and a judge, and she saw the damage. And she stepped up, and people don't realize what she's done by getting the Fox regime out. If her handpicked person had won again, we'd be in the same mess, and it would be only getting worse. And so, I'm confident she will do it. But again, I have 90 prosecutors now.
Right.
When I started with the office in the early 80s, we had 14. So you can see the difference. But she's down from 900 at 540. They've only got one prosecutor on a trial call. I have 3. You can't run on one.
No.
And get the cases tried. You wind up having to plead them out maybe for less than you want to. But since we've already tried that case, there's a transcript of that. It would be easy for somebody to put the case back on and win it. So I'm very confident that he also has the rape charge. But I talked to her first assistant, and they're asking the county board for authorization, I believe, to hire 280 attorneys. Now, you know the financial condition of Chicago and Cook County right now.
Yeah, we're all well aware of what's happening there.
I'm afraid of what kind of response she's going to get. But how disgusting to let the number of attorneys drop that far to where you're almost at failsafe.
Yeah, but Jim, I'm going to tell you, and I say this, unfortunately, in the state of Illinois, down in Springfield, law enforcement is not a priority. There are other priorities where that money is going.
Well, it's worse than
and there's
that.
an agenda that is a political agenda that is putting all of us in jeopardy.
There was another law that was put in, and I'm not going to name the legislator.
All right.
But he got a bill number, and he had a first reading. And that law said you don't have to have license plates on your car. So you can't stop a car with no license plates. Now that's where we get 95% of our stops with flock cameras, and it also IDs who was involved in the incident, okay? So that's the most ludicrous thing you could ever think of, but they put that into a law, and they filed it and had a first reading. And then they said, you can't stop a car for speeding till they're 25 miles over the limit. Now, that's just nonsense. Why don't you just raise all the speed limits,
it's reckless
right?
drive, yeah,
okay.
right.
So, and then you can't stop a car for blacked out windows. And then if you do, any evidence you obtain from that stop is automatically suppressed, even if the driver gives consent. So he could have 5 dead bodies from murders he committed in the car, and they would all be suppressed under that lunatic law.
It's the fruit of the poisonous tree. Yeah, it's craziness.
Well, that is
craziness.
But it's one thing to talk nonsense like that, to put it in writing. And the person that put that bill forward was one of the authors of the original Safety Act. But it kind of gave you a window into the soul of the motivation on the original Safety Act. You talk about complete anarchy. The police would have been powerless if that law ever went into effect.
Absolutely.
Every one of us would be victimized every single day, and there would be nothing you could do about it.
And what was most insulting, I remember the governor when he was talking about the Safety Act, and I happen to agree that wealth should not be the determining factor of whether you're held or not. It should be the crime that you've committed. I don't care how much money you have or not. He'd go out and say, well, some poor woman that's stealing diapers for her baby just because she doesn't have $100. Hey, listen, first of all, you're spending billions on social programs, so she shouldn't have to steal diapers. You should be giving them to her, and I'm okay with that. And I would agree, nonviolent, first-time offenders that commit a property crime, I don't have a problem with not being held. But they took it, that was the example they would give, but they were protecting criminals is what they were doing. And I can't understand. That mindset is not where the majority of the people are. We're not talking the far extremes on one side that thinks everybody should be locked up, or the far extremes on the other thinks nobody should be locked up. The overwhelming majority of the people are good people that have compassion, that realize there are addiction, that realizes there are paths to help people out. But we have to have laws, and they have to be enforced.
Right.
What's happening here in this state? And again, I ask you, you're doing everything you can, but by our proximity to Cook County, we continue to be victims of that crap that goes on just north of I-80.
Yes. But again, when they come here, we deal with them appropriately. In the last 8 years, there's been 4,000 people murdered in the city of Chicago and 15,000 wounded.
That's not true because there's no crime there, Jim.
Well, those numbers are staggering, and I believe it leads the nation.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's not Will County.
No.
And so, we had that horrible murder at the gas station in New Lenox,
Yes.
and that you know, my youngest son is 24 years old, and you know, I told him, you do not gas up your car unless the sun's out.
Right.
And even in Will County.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but thankfully, miraculously, we got evidence in that case in order to get a successful prosecution and conviction. Again, it was a divine intervention. The knucklehead got into an accident the next day, and we figured out he was the same guy. Because if that didn't happen, we might never have solved that case.
No, and you're right. And there were three things that went on. Number one, our police department, they did a phenomenal job. Number two, your office, once again, completely supported them. And number three, the mother of that poor child was tireless in her efforts and in pushing and wanting that. Not everybody has that going for them. We're fortunate again here in Will County that we do. Jim, I want to thank you for what you do as the mayor with my police department. You and your office are always incredibly supportive of us. And to your point earlier, because I'm talking to my chief anytime we have any type of major incident like that, it's not just a blanket, yes, go ahead. You make sure that we have done our job. You make sure that you can have a successful prosecution. And I appreciate that. But when we do our job, which our officers do, your office supports them 100% of the time. And more importantly than as the mayor is as a resident who have children and grandchildren that live in this town. I appreciate that you put the politics aside, which is incredibly rare for elected officials anywhere anymore, that you put the politics aside and you do what's best for us. I would encourage people to go to the Will County State's Attorney's website. There's a whole laundry list of awards that you've been given that I know you appreciate, but you don't do it for that. But you have a reputation of being fair, but of being firm. And we appreciate all that you do for us.
Well, I'm very proud of the fact that the last 3 elections I ran unopposed. And that's because people know that I'm going to do the right thing. And, you know, I take great pride in that. Why don't we just take a second? Let me read
talk
these.
about the problems you're still having.
But
let
me
with
just
these.
read to the public some of these crimes that are not detainable. And what you have to understand with that is it doesn't matter what your criminal history is.
That's right. So you could have felony convictions, done prison time. It doesn't matter.
If you talk to our judges, I can't think of one judge that won't tell you that they're very angry that they're forced in this situation to not consider the criminal history of these people in their decision to let them go or not let them go.
All right, read them off.
Aggravated battery to a police officer or a person 60 years of age or older, physical disability, not detainable. Driving under the influence of alcohol, first, second, or even third offense.
Even if they're convictions.
Yes, a third arrest for DUI, you are a very dangerous person, and we cannot detain you. Burglary. Now, that's not residential burglary. That's burglary of any building. And then that fentanyl thing we talked about. Aggravated fleeing and eluding. Now, if you're a policeman.
Puts all kind of people in
Yes,
jeopardy.
you know that's one of the most horrifically dangerous things that happens to a policeman.
That's right.
Right? And we've seen very tragic things happen during that situation. Harassment of a juror. You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
The bedrock of the fairness of our system. And you can't incarcerate somebody for that?
That's right.
Obstructing justice, possession of a stolen motor vehicle, unlawful dissemination of sexual content, and failure to register as a sex offender is not detainable.
No matter how many times.
On a second offense, it could. But
regardless of your history.
Yeah, but the point of regardless of your history, he could have 10 rape convictions.
Right. And if he doesn't register the first time, it's okay. You can't detain.
The critical nature of knowing where he's at with 10 rape convictions, and it doesn't matter. So common sense is not involved in this, and I think there's a little bit of a shift maybe in some of the elected officials where they've seen the problems that this creates, and I'm hopeful maybe within the next year we might get them to tighten these up. But just so you know, our jail population is only down 100 from before the Safety Act, because we're holding these people on these serious cases and until their trials, and the defense attorneys, they asked for the continuances.
Sure.
Okay, we knew that was going to happen. But what wouldn't have happened with the 90-day thing, when the guy knows I'm getting out in 90 days, I don't care what my defense attorney says. I'm scooting. Right? And then they can't get me back because they can't get a warrant, and I ain't coming back.
Right.
That's the most lunatic situation. And again, I can't tell you, like halfway through my speech in Naperville, I just got that zeal going, and I couldn't stop talking. And I knew I had lit a fuse, but I wasn't going to stop. But the thing that's so scary is so many people in so many professions just are willing to, they'll say it's bad, but I can't do anything about it. I'm worried about the repercussions, whatever. I love repercussions.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just, but again, there's no job better than the job that I have, even though from 2008 to 2018, Mike Madigan froze my salary. I did not get a raise for 10 years. That didn't just hurt me. It hurt every one of my assistant state's attorneys because they judge what they should make based on what I make. And he's doing 8.5 years now. I guess he gets to do 85%. But I wish I could have been at his sentencing and, just.
Yeah.
But you look at it, even at the federal level, Congress has always understaffed our U.S. attorneys' offices. Why do you think they do that? They want turnover, and they don't want anybody being career looking at them and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Which is so sad.
Well, like I said, the question, when you hear all of this, the people who are passing these laws, the one question is, who are you protecting? Right. It's certainly not the good law-abiding citizens of this county, of the state, of the country sometimes.
Absolutely.
Jim, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. Appreciate your service. And I hope you continue doing what you're doing because you're doing a hell of a job for us here in Will County.
Well, let me get back here and talk to you some about some of the Peterson case and some of the other big, big trials.
You've had a lot of big trials. You've had a lot of big cases. You had people making threats against you, and those are well known. But we will get you back there.
Well, let me just tell you something I just learned from Reverend Shorey, who was my key witness in the Peterson case. He popped up on my grand jury when we decided to have a special grand jury. He jumped up and says, "I think I got a conflict. The most important witness in the case God put on my grand jury. I didn't have to go look for him." And then this one knocked the ball out of the park. I couldn't believe this. Peterson solicited my murder, right?
Right, I do, yeah.
He hired Antonio Smith to kill me. Well, Shorey just told me Antonio Smith was a student of his father-in-law. His father-in-law is a preacher and a teacher and had a close relationship with Antonio Smith and said he was a good kid, basically, and he just got with some bad people. And that's what he told Ken when he went down to talk to him after he had written the letter saying he was willing to help me. He said, "Yeah, I just didn't want anything to happen to Mr. Glasgow." So he had a good core in him, even though he did a home invasion with some really bad people and he got a 30-year sentence. He wasn't asking for anything. He was willing to wear a wire, and that saved my life.
Yeah.
But it's impossible that he has a connection to Reverend Shorey. The two most important people, it's impossible.
Intervention.
But but again, throughout, I should run them all down. But the divine interventions like that, but that one saved my life. Absolutely saved my life because, if he had gotten the right guy, he was going to contract with somebody outside the prison to kill me for $10,000.
10 grand?
Yeah.
That jacket you're wearing is worth more than 10 grand, buddy. Jim, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. I think there's a lot of great information for all of you. You paid attention to what our state's attorney had to say. Hopefully this rubs off on some of our other counties. We are optimistic. Hopefully our neighbors to the north, now that they've got a good lead prosecutor there, hopefully that'll slow down some of the nonsense we see going on out here. But we want to thank all of you for watching and listening to this edition of Too Honest for Social Media.
Stealing your life away.